Hello and welcome to Play Pause Turn. In this podcast, we discuss all things to do with TV, films, games and literature. We give our thoughts on the media we've been enjoying, old or new, and comment on anything topical. I'm John, hello, and joining me this time round are Amy, Alex and Mark. Now, as always, I will be asking them an intro question to break the ice and to find out more about their personalities. So our topic today is going to be The Suicide Squad. We've all seen the film. And the intro question here, I'm going to start with Mark because he's our newbie for this time round.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Mark. If you were a member of the Suicide Squad, what would your power be, Mark?
Oh, what would my power be? I think my power would be quite good is if I could tell if someone was lying or not. Because there's a lot of, which we won't talk about, spoil it too much, because there's a few twists and crosses and double crosses in the film. So I think if you had someone who was able to tell the difference between a lie and the truth, I think that would be quite good. I don't know what that character would be called. Truth Maker? I don't know. There we go. But yeah, I'll go Truth.
Okay, that's interesting. That might be a complete nightmare as well in your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think you'd have to state it. You'd have to state it, Mark. So if someone said something, you'd have to go, no, it's not. No, you're not going to do that. Because otherwise it would be a bit,
Or maybe you go a colour if they lie.
Oh, nice.
So if they tell a lie, maybe you go purple or something like that.
I think that would give you more comedic value in the film, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think so. That's a good point, actually, yeah. Or like any colour you could think of, maybe.
Maybe your nose would get longer.
Yes, that's a good one. Yes, just like Pinocchio. I could be Pinocchio, man. There we go. That, or it goes red, or there's like like it tells you like if someone said something wrong or not. That'd be quite cool, I think.
Yeah, I don't think the word would be cool, but okay.
No, it'd be problematic, but it'd be quite good. I'm just thinking now. I don't know if you guys have seen the Ricky Gervais film, The Invention of Lying.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen that. So it's a very underrated film, very funny film as well. He invents lying in this other world, but there we go.
It's a world where no one can lie, and he.
Yeah, lie's not been invented yet.
It's
and
quite clever.
It is quite clever, yeah. It's an underrated film.
I mean, the only downside is you have to watch Ricky Gervais, but yeah, otherwise it's quite a good film.
Well, I love Gervais, so although me and John don't really agree on anything, which is quite funny.
And that's the beauty of it.
That's why it's fun. I adore Gervais, but I know you don't as well, so yeah.
Amy, what would you be? What would your character be?
I think I'd be the stationer, where my hands and my fingers can mimic generalised stationery. So if someone's coming at me, I'm going to shoot them with my staple gun fingers. So watch out the way, or I'm going to give them a really nasty paper cut. So yeah.
So they would morph into those devices, would they?
Yeah, I can produce whatever you need. If we're in a non-sticky situation, I can produce Prick Stick. Other sticky things are available.
Okay, that would
Behave,
be useful.
Mark.
Yeah, that would be useful.
Sorry.
Firing staples out of your fingers would be quite good.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think when you'd use the photocopier. What situation would you use the photocopier hands?
Probably pick up and throw it at someone. That would be pretty effective.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Alex, how about you?
So I'd like to be called Second Time Lucky. And basically, the reason I say that is basically someone who basically spends the entire movie just sort of sitting down on a chair or just sort of nonchalantly just following along at the back, not really bothered, maybe on his phone, just really not engaged. And then as soon as someone tries something and fails horribly, they just sort of go, second time lucky, and then I just go, okay, and then I just waltz along and I have good luck for that because it's the second time. So it would just mean that like maybe you have to have sacrificial people to come along.
I was going to say a whole queue of cannon fodder ahead of you.
Yeah, they could just sort of walk along and just like shoot and say, I can't do it. And they'd be like, secretary lucky? And they'd be like, I'd be like, oh, all right then. Okay. And I'd just wander and like bullets would miss me and I'd just like go and put the right code in and, all that kind of stuff. So it'd just be a get out of jail free card for the film.
I think that's very reflective of life at home because generally I fail the first time I do anything and I just go, Alex! And then you come along and you can do it.
Yeah, but I'm less nonchalant than that. I mean, a little bit less. Not
These sound more like characters from Ben Stiller's Mystery Men than the
Yes.
DC or a Marvel film.
Yeah.
Oh, that is a film, and I'm sure there'll be a
That is a
podcast on that in the
great film.
future.
We should do a podcast on that. Although that power, Alex, would be great in the pub, wouldn't it? That's a great power to have for the pub.
how come?
If you get served, or you drop your pint, or something like that, or last orders. No, it's all right. There we go. Second time lucky, we'll get in. That'd be great in a pub.
Yeah, true.
It'd also be
True.
quite good if you suffer from impotence, I imagine, as well. Anyway, moving on. I would be...
Nightclub, man. That'd be great in the nightclub. There
Don't
we
worry,
go,
I'll try
yeah.
again in 15 minutes.
Oh, she said no, Alex. Second time lucky. Go on.
I would be the Apple
Oh, yeah.
apologist. That's my character, and I would basically, in a situation where we had a bit of time to kill someone, I'd basically bore them to death by extolling my love of Apple products. So that would be
Brilliant.
my power.
Don't you do that already?
Yeah. Anyway, moving swiftly on. So, the Suicide Squad. This is the Suicide Squad, not the Suicide Squad. A lot of people actually got quite confused by that. So, yeah, we're going to talk about the film. Obviously, we've all seen the film. Some of us more than once. It's a reimagining, or it's not a sequel to Suicide Squad. It's kind of an alternative
Soft
Suicide
reboot,
Squad
I think,
film.
isn't it?
Say again,
Yeah.
Mark?
Soft reboot, I think, is the way they've been sort of portraying it as. Because it's got some of the characters for the first film as well, hasn't it? As well.
Yeah. There's a few. There's Harley Quinn, one definitely that's been in both films.
Yeah, Flag as well.
Yeah. So have you read the comics, Mark?
I have, yes. So this was actually one of the first comics I actually read as a kid. So my cousin introduced it to me in the 80s as well. So I'm going to butcher this name now. John Oster Murder. I've completely destroyed his name there. But he has probably the most famous run of the whole thing. He did it in the 80s. He rebooted it in the 80s as well. And a lot of this film is taken from that run. And also the group that is in this. So a lot of the characters
So
from both
a lot
films.
of the original film.
For both. So, for example, so in his run in the 80s, characters that were in his Suicide Squad included Flag as the leader, Captain Boomerang, Javelin, Bronze Tiger. Just trying to think of other ones. Deadshot as well. So, and that was Will Smith in the first film. So that was the original. That's probably the most famous run. And actually, the creator has a very quick cameo in the film. He injects Michael Rooker's character with his bomb in the back of his neck at the start of the film as well. So, but I did read it, so a lot in the 80s. And then characters like Harley Quinn, etc., sort of come into it at the end of the 90s, start of 2000s as well. But the 80s run was fantastic. Yeah, I read that a lot.
So Captain Flag and Ratcatcher, not Ratcatcher, Viola Davis's character, the lady who runs the team.
Amanda Waller.
Yeah,
That's
she's
right.
always been. Yeah,
They were in Joel Kinnaman, who played Captain Flag. They were in the original movie as well.
That's
So
correct.
they've
Yes.
come through to this one, which is great because they're all very good characters.
Yes.
Amy, have you seen the original Suicide Squad film or read the comics at all?
I've not read the comics and I haven't seen the original either. And actually, this was the first time I've ever seen Harley Quinn on screen outside of an animation.
Because we talked about this before, but I really, really, really liked Birds of Prey. It's up until this point one of my favourite DC films. So if you haven't seen it, it's worth watching. And you can,
I'm just writing it in really big letters on a piece of paper.
It doesn't matter that you're seeing it after Suicide Squad either.
No.
Yeah,
it
no,
stands
doesn't
alone in
matter.
its own way, in a good kind of way. Alex, have you seen the original film and have you read the comics?
No, so I wasn't that big a DC fan, so I didn't read the comics. And then this came out just after Justice League, I think, didn't it? And
Before Justice League.
or just before Justice League. And because Suicide Squad, the reviews on it were really bad, and then the reviews on Justice League were really bad as well, the original one, I just didn't dip into either of them. And we were going through Marvel, like 1-2 at the time, so there was loads of Marvels that were coming out. So I just missed it completely. I should probably watch it just for Will Smith, because I think he's probably quite funny. But honestly, I'm not I'm not sure it's worth it now. It's kind of.
Can I do a quick little bit of trivia about that film, if that's all right?
Yeah, do.
So, much like the Snyder Cut, there is a version of the first Suicide Squad from 2016, and there's a campaign called #Release the Ayer Cut.
Is it David Ayer?
David Ayer was the director of the first film. So apparently his version of the 2016 film, his cut of it, is a bit more mature, a bit more violent, a bit more sort of grounded as well.
Right.
And the story goes that because of the sort of lukewarm stroke negative reaction of Batman, Superman, Dawn of Justice, all the Marvel producers got very, very nervy about the Suicide Squad, and they wanted to make it more jokey and more light-hearted. So apparently the cut that was in cinemas and has been released on DVD, etc., was kind of a mismatch of Warner Brothers producers sort of panicking, and Ayer's original cut was completely sort of butchered as well. So there was a campaign to get it out there as well, and I'd be very interested to see it as well, because when I saw the film, I was surprised that it was so poor, considering the director who was directing it as well. He's done a lot of good stuff. So I'd be interested to see that film. So so I think they are trying to get that released. So that'd be quite interesting if it comes out.
DC's got form in doing that, hasn't it? Because they
Warner Brothers are the problem. Yeah. Warner Brothers. They're probably one of the worst studios for handling comic properties. And now that Fox has gone as well. So Warner Brothers' track record is patchy at best.
It's funny that, isn't it? Because you just need one or two visionaries, one or two people who understand what's going on, like Kevin Feige, to make a difference, or Dave Filoni in the Star Wars side. It sounds like DC just don't seem to have that at the moment. Although, we'll talk about our thoughts about The Suicide Squad, James Gunn's film, in a second. But I think the tide has turned a little bit with that film, but you may disagree with me. Obviously, if you've listened to this podcast, we're hoping that you've seen the film, because we're going to get very spoilery. We're going to talk about some of the sort of standout set pieces and scenes from the film. The film itself, I watched it again today, just before the podcast, and it does hold up on a second viewing, and I think it's quite an interesting film when you watch it initially. I found it, I don't think it was hard to follow, but I found the pace a little bit quirky initially, but I think having watched it already and watching it again, it does hold up really well. And the story is very much a heist movie that turns into a political thriller with gore and comedy. That's how I would describe it, really. Let's talk about some of our favourite scenes. Mark, what stood out for you? What really stuck in your mind when you watched this film that you enjoyed watching?
So I'll just add a caveat very quickly and just say that I absolutely loved this film.
Yeah.
I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I've seen it twice. I want to see it again. And I absolutely loved it. There are problems with it, particularly of pacing. You're not wrong there as well. And Gunn, as a director, isn't notoriously great for pacing as well. Guns of Galaxy 2 suffers a lot from pacing as well. Something that doesn't... Actually, in one, he gets away with it. There's a little bit of a lull in it as well, but his pacing sometimes it is a bit off. That is a weakness of him as well, and it is evident in this, particularly like in the middle section. In terms of favourite scenes, I did... the scene when they are what they believe to be killing the bad guys in that camp, all the in brackets villains are dispatched in various sort of gory ways. There's this nice one-upmanship between Peacemaker and I think Deadshot in it as well, when they're trying to like who kills the most people. And they get to the camp and they meet the leader because they're trying to rescue Flag, and Flag's drinking with one of the rebellion's leaders, and they realise that they've killed a load of good guys instead of bad guys as well. That made me laugh out loud in the cinema. I thought it was very funny. It's dark humour, but I like dark humour, that's me. And I thought that was very, very funny. And the scene itself, the way he did it, was shot beautifully, but I also thought it was hysterically funny as well, when they're kind of like... And then I can't do it justice, but then the leader sort of says, I'm surprised you're here. Like, I'm sure that my guards would have told me if you arrived. Have you seen them? And they've just killed him. Like, no, we haven't seen them. No guards around as well. And there's like blood and like legs hanging off and arms and everything. Speaking about it, I can't do it justice, but it's really funny. Yeah, I really like that scene. That's one of my favourites.
It was the quiet sort of pause, and then the slight sort of squeak of leather of their suits as they all kind of turned and looked at each other with all their guns in their hands and sort of various weapons and appendages. Yeah. I mean, the thing is that is a trademark of Gunn. It's those kind of the change from the wham bam smashing scenes to the quirky slow down silly conversations, which can affect the pace. And I think as time goes on, I think Gunn will get that will become his style, and people will just accept him for who he is. I think that you could see later on in life cinema techniques, the gun pace, they might even call it. So I don't think he's making his mark, isn't he, in cinema? That's how he films. And it seems to work in this film. It does for me anyway. Amy, how about you? What stands out for you?
I always go for the silly things. So I really loved it when they were interviewing or questioning Thinker on that rooftop and telling him exactly how it was going to go. And just Harley's entire approach to the entire thing. I'm sure at one point she says, and I am going to walk up and down. And I love that. And she says, if you mismatch blacks, you die. And it's just so... I love that. It was really cartoony. And from someone who really... My only genuine experience of Harley is seeing her sometimes in some animations. That's about it. It summed up what I would expect from her. I also loved King Shark and what I'm calling the bad squidfish. I don't know what they were.
Starro.
No,
Starro.
not Starro.
No,
These are the teeny
ones.
weeny little ones
Oh,
that he
the
plays with.
little
And you're
Starros.
like, do you know what? Something's
Yes.
finally going right for Shark King. Isn't that lovely? And then they try and eat him. And you go, oh no, poor Shark King. And for a moment you think, oh, he's actually going to die. And then you forget he's indestructible, so it's okay.
Well,
But yeah,
it's funny
fun.
because the bullets bounce off him, but these little fish can just bite holes out of him. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
And from a
mean,
slightly more serious thing that I really enjoyed was the bit where they're running through the building as it was falling. I thought that
Oh,
was
yeah, that
really
is
nicely
great as
filmed.
well, yeah.
And it there were lots of moments where you did genuinely think, I don't know if they're all going to make it. And that's good, rather than just sitting through a film going, well, they're all the heroes, they'll be fine, because we're dealing with anti-heroes. So that makes it different.
The standard was set at the beginning of the film, really, when a lot of the heroes get killed off in the first sort of 10 minutes.
Yeah, I was shocked by that.
And I thought that was really well done. I thought that was a very clever kind of standard to set for the film, because you just don't know what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
And I think in some respects, if you're not a DC fan, this film might have more of an impact on you than if you are, because I would imagine if you're a comic book reader, you might have sort of picked up on certain things and sort of predicted. But as a sort of non-DC follower, apart from perhaps Batman, I found I was constantly being surprised by the film, and I really enjoyed that part of it. Alex, what about you? What stood out for you?
I think the beach scene was one that really it did shock me, but I think that's partly because I didn't know what I was getting myself in for. So when half the people, including Nathan Fillion, for example, gets completely mowed down. I mean, I get his character was ridiculous. Like, I totally get that. But then I was just like, oh no. And then literally in the space of about 60 seconds, all the team is incinerated or just macerated with bullets or other bits and bobs. And then you kind of, I get it now. Right.
They're sacrificial lambs, aren't they? Basically,
everyone is disposable, and yeah, I think the only thing is for me, it kind of it made me not necessarily trust it, and then I got settled in again and started caring about the characters again, but I did always worry that something would happen. So when we got to that charming scene with King Shark and the aquarium. And the music, and because the thing is, Gunn's cues are not subtle.
No.
Like he's kind of
No.
So when he makes it so charming, I'm just like, oh no, something's going to go wrong. Oh dear. And I was just waiting, and then when when the glass broke, I was just like, yeah, yeah, this is going to go badly, and of course it did. So some of it, I was like in gritted teeth, just feeling really, really bad for them. And then I just about settled down through Harley's bit, and then we got to Starro, and at that point I was just like, oh no, this is not going to go well again. And
I really wish I hadn't seen the trailer where the kaiju comes out of the building, because you see that in the trailer, don't you?
Yeah, I'm a bit surprised they put that in, actually.
Yeah, it would have been. I think. Well, I mean, they're going for the extreme sort of. It's a draw, isn't it? It's a draw to watch the film. There's this craziness at the end. One thing I have noticed, I have somewhere in my house. I've got to drag it out and have a look at it. I have got an encyclopedia of DC characters, every single character, and like a top trump card for each one in a book. And I have been reading a lot of Scooby-Doo crossover comics with my son, because obviously Warner Brothers own Scooby-Doo as well as DC, the DC sort of field, and a lot of the sort of characters from the 60s and 70s, DC heroes, are in that comic as sort of retro, sort of homage. And one thing DC does do, I'm sure Marvel do it as well, they do some very, very strange, quirky superheroes. I think in some respects DC are stranger than Marvel. And I think that's the benefit of this film, because there's a plethora of little nods to characters. Sean Gunn, who plays Weasel, also plays another character you see at the beginning of the film with tattoos around his head. And so again...
He's called Calendar Man.
Yes, Calendar Man, that's correct. Amy?
Mark had a fun fact, so I have a fun fact now. The detachable kid
Yeah.
is based on a throwaway character from a really old batch of comics with the best name ever, and it's a character who's trying to get into like the League of Heroes or something.
Yeah.
And the character's name is Arms Fall Off Guy.
I mean, it strikes me as that's the perfect character to become an action figure to sell to kids.
It really is.
Yeah.
Like these mash-up toys. Yes, there's again, I get these sort of Mystery Men vibes from these, especially the beach scene. And I'm going to have to go back and look at some of these characters and see their background, just to sort of, find the colour in that scene, really. I really, really enjoyed Margot Robbie's homage to Birds of Prey. That's the scene where she escapes the Presidente's palace. So she's just killed the guy in the sexy pants who asked to marry her. Mm-hmm. Is it Luna? It's Luna, isn't it?
Yeah.
And for me, we talked about John Wick in another podcast. I really enjoyed that scene because of her kind of escape and her shooty action. I thought that was really clever and really good. I did keep finding myself thinking Harlequin seems to have superhuman strength. And some of the scenes where she jumps roofs and things, it almost seem like, hold on, is that normal? Can a human do that? But this scene was brilliant, and I really, really liked the blood changing into sort of flowers and petals and birds and butterflies and things. The Harley vision, so it's almost like this is what she sees whenever she goes on a rampage. She doesn't see blood and guts; she sees these sort of effects, and I thought that was really, really cool. And I can't say it on our podcast because we're a clean podcast, but every time Blood Sport says "Oh, for F's sake," it happened quite a lot. And it came across really well in his English accent. So he was this like long-suffering sort of superhero with idiots around him. I think he is the viewer's point of view in quite a lot of this film. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
He's the everyman superhero. But I think for me, in terms of cinematography, I really, really enjoyed when the final few of them attacked Jotunheim in the rain, and the camera had been bleached. They'd set the exposure very high, and they just disappeared into the white and came out in the rain, and the scene kind of went 2.5, like 75% slow mo as they're gutting all the soldiers, and King Shark breaks a guy in half. I just thought that was really stylish, because a lot of the film is very much what you see is what you get with the camera work. We'll talk about that in a second, about the visual style. But I really like that scene. It struck me as being this is the final kind of glorious scene they have together. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that. Speaking of the characters, we've talked about how many different superheroes there are in this film. There are some really interesting characters in this film. So let's go through a few of those now, your particular favourites and why you like them. Mark?
I just want to say one thing on the beat, sorry, and then we'll get back to that. So I thought at the start of this, I had an idea that Gunn was going to kill off Flag first, because I really like Joel Kinnaman as an actor, and I'll get into him in a minute. But he was kind of a symbol of the last film, so I really thought he would die first. But I was surprised that Boomerang, Jay Courtney, who was the main character in the first one, was killed straight off. I was really surprised by that. He gets a bit of a glorious death in the beach scene as well. But I thought that really shocked me, actually, because Jay Courtney's quite a big actor, quite a big star. He's only in it for 5 minutes. I was quite surprised by that. So that was a good surprise. And then, as Alex said too about, when you see that scene, it keeps you off balance. You don't know what's coming. And I thought that was a good way of doing it as well. And then, just on the Nathan Fillion arms guy, whose name escapes me at the moment.
TDK.
Yeah, so that's the one. So,
Like his video cassette.
And we are a clean podcast, but when his arms come off and he starts doing it, they cut to Harley, who says, "What the
bleep
F?" But the way she says it and the way that Margaret Robbie delivers it is very, very funny. It's not just saying it for that sake. Her mannerisms and the voice and the way she says it and her surprise at his power really made me laugh in the cinema. That's probably the second time I think in a film that I cracked up laughing straight away as well.
It took me a while to spot it was Nathan Fillion actually as well.
Yeah, I cracked up straight away when she said that. I thought it was very funny. In regards to characters, and I'll go around the backs again. Sorry of that. One who did surprise me was John Cena as Peacemaker even as well. Because they kind of do him as a douchey version of Captain America, which is what he is in the comics as well. He wants peace at any price. It doesn't matter how many people he has to kill to get it as well, which is a great line for the character as well. And sort of John Cena sort of gave me focus as a wrestler as well, like Dave Bautista as in the Guardians, that
Drax.
kind of delivery. Yeah, as Drax. It's a big guy, so you don't expect of him. He's just like the muscle, and all that. But actually, he gives a very, very funny performance actually as well. So he can play it straight, but he's also very funny with it as well. And so, and that character is a nice contrast to Joel Kinnaman's Flag, who I was a big fan of in the first film. Basically, I'm a big fan of Joel Kinnaman, the actor. I remember seeing him in a film, in a series.
Altered Carbon.
Yeah, he was in that, which is really good in that as well. He's also in the he's also something called, I think it was The Missing. It was called. It's like a detective drama. He was in that as well.
He was very good in For All Mankind, which is an Apple TV series about the space race where the Russians land first, like an alternate timeline.
Oh,
the guy from the Battlestar Galactica creator, Ronald D. Moore. Yeah. It's worth watching if you haven't seen it. It's very good.
Yeah. So
yeah, he's good. I like him as well.
Yeah, I like Joel Kinnaman. So I think he got a lot more to do in this version of Flag as well. And I was actually a bit gutted when Flag died. I really liked him as a character. And they were good, two interesting parallels again. Again, what I like about the film is that Gunn does everything in this. There's fun, there's humour, there's action, there's gore. There's also a lot of sentiment in it, and there's also a bit of a good political message in there as well. So the fact that the US are involved in the development of Starro, but they've took it off to the US, and in this sort of small country, there's a bit of a thin leaf sort of scaled attack, I think, on the US and its foreign policy, I think. And it was interesting to see the contrast between Kinnaman's Flag and between Cena's Peacemaker. So Cena's very much sort of pro-US, we can't let this come out, it'll be a disaster. The Flag's more like, no, we should give the truth out as well. And I thought that was a nice contrast that he did well, Gunn, with both characters. So those two...
Mark, but who's the better soldier, though? Who's the more loyal soldier?
Well, exactly. It's a very good question, yeah. See, that's interesting. See, that I find that very interesting. I think that's really well done. And I think, in a way, that's more... Again, I don't want to compare it to Marvel, but I thought their story was a bit more compelling than what we saw in Falcon and Winter Soldier, really, as well, where, you know, it's very much clear who's the good and who's the bad. Where in this one, it's a bit more murkier, and that's what I liked about it, I think, for me.
I would argue that it was a bit less fleshed out in this film, though.
Yeah, you've probably got less time in that, exactly, yeah. But I'd say that I found the characters in this more interesting, though.
How about you, Amy?
Well, at the moment, I'm just waiting for Mark to announce his breakaway podcast based around Joel Kinnaman, but we know it's on the way.
Yeah, I'm a Joel Kinnaman fan, sorry, yes.
So, obviously, I adored Harley, and her approach to everything was just wonderful. So I really enjoyed her and how she would just literally throw herself into an eyeball of a monster for her team. But also she will just shoot a man based on, it's a bit of a red flag, it's a no from me. So I love that. King Shark, because he's just the dopey fun one that everybody loves. And I really loved Polka Dot Man as well. I loved how they, as soon as they give away someone's backstory, that either means they're going to stay for a long time or they be dead. But I loved the comedic value of that his mum was his biggest enemy. And all that Bloodsport had to do was say, "It's your mum," which is a classic British insult, by the way. And suddenly that was it. He was off, and he was being a superhero. And I really liked the way that his character progressed.
I think the fact that you could see from his point of view that when every character suddenly became his mum was really cool and really clever. You know, he'd look over at the team, and they all had the same head as his mum, and sort of like in their outfits, but. I really felt for the actress because it was not a very what's I'm looking for. It wasn't a very pleasant look for her in some of those scenes. Fair play to her, but I agree with you. He's a great character. Yeah. How about you, Alex? Are you a fan of Polka Dot Man as well?
Oh, yeah. It's just I really enjoyed his character. I think his sort of driving force of hating his mum. A little bit disturbing. There were a bit of moments throughout that were a bit cringeworthy, like when Starro was turned into his mum, and I was like, "Well, okay, I get that," but I didn't need to see it. There were some things that once you see it, you're like, "Oh no,
can't see it."
But yeah, so I think, I am probably going to join the Joel Kinnaman Appreciation Society like Mark, because I think he was great, and so that really it did shock me a bit. But Bloodsport's great. I just love the fact of being the reluctant leader, you know, because it just meant that, like, the frustration that we felt, he would verbalise and just, you know, honestly, what could it get worse? I mean, I did like the bit on the beach, actually, where Rick Flag says, "I didn't pick the team," and it's like, you know, because of everything. So I think that was quite funny. But yeah, I think they held up it for me. I think, you know, the performance of Ratcatcher 2 by Daniela Melchior, I think it is. It was good, but it came across like a millennial, basically. So I think
that's the point, though, isn't it? They mentioned they call her that at the beginning of the film, don't they?
Yeah,
yeah, it's a bit of a stereotype.
Yeah,
it's just like tired, slightly entitled, not really phased about much. You know, just kind of reminds me a bit of my daughter, really.
Are rats nocturnal?
Should be, yeah. Because
I think I don't know if it's just me thinking too much, but I think what they were trying, because whenever you see the flashbacks of Ratcatcher 2's, you know, her and her father, they're always at night, and I wonder if she got so used to being with the rats at night time, she kind of matched their rhythms of their night, you know, and so whenever you see her in the film, she's sleeping or she's lying in, because her superhero power is the rats. She's like one of them. Perhaps the daytime is just not her time for her. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
They've kind of matched her way of things like the rats.
I feel like that's the kind of thing that could have been easily explained, and we would have been like, oh, cool, you know. Whereas instead, it obviously was on the cutting room floor or never made it, and so consequently, we're like, yeah, good point. Why was that? And there was a few bits like that which they could have explained if they wanted to.
But you don't want to insult the intelligence of the viewers. I mean, some people might want to enjoy working that out, but I see what you mean. The thing is, this film is a lot of characters, especially if you're a newbie to DC, a lot of characters to kind of process, aren't there?
Yeah, I think it's almost deliberate that they don't dip into it very heavily, so that when you do end up with them being bumped off, you're not too fussed. I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing, but yeah. So no, those were my favourites. Polka Dot Man was funny, though I did enjoy him.
Mark, you were about to say something?
I was just going to say, just on Ratcatcher 2, again, I think this is why I really enjoy this film, because it supersedes sort of expectations, right? So Ratcatcher 2 is portrayed as a millennial, like everything you just said, doesn't get up, lazy, etc., like that, Like, and Peacemaker does say, "Oh, millennials," like that. But at the end, she's one of the main reasons why they win.
Yeah. So,
it's her power that is one of the main reasons why they defeat Starro. So again, I like the idea that again, it's a cliche, or it's I like all millennials are lazy. Well, no, they're not. That's just like a preconceived notion. That's a generalisation. And actually, Gunn uses that and actually turns it on its head when she's one of the main reasons why they win. And again, that's just, again, in a 2-hour film, I think it's very good the way you can do it, like the way you can get characterisation in a lot of characters and change it around. And again, that's what I liked about that as well. Like he cares about everyone. I think Gunn. He doesn't judge people. He doesn't put people into categories. And I like that about his work. Particularly in Ratcatcher, because she could be a very easy character not to like in that. Very easy, the whole, very easy not to like her. But he puts a lot of heart into her, and the flashback scenes with Taika Waititi as her dad as well are quite good. The relationship that she develops with King Shark as well. And there's a great thing, is it? I think King Shark offers Idris Elba's character, Bloodsport. Like a leaf, So what do I need a leaf for? He said, "He's trying to make friends, So they gave her a lot of emotion and a lot of warmth from initially disliking her, which I really liked that. I thought that was really good.
I mean, I enjoy Bloodsport because of that as well. I liked I like what they're trying to do here. They're trying to give a bit more depth to the characters, and I like that relationship between Bloodsport and his daughter, and how that mirrored the relationship between Bloodsport and Ratcatcher 2. You could see that she was a surrogate daughter to him, and he said, "I'll look after you and save you." And she said, "Well, I can save you." And she does in the end, as you say. Well, I like that, and I like the fact they're trying to build up these characterizations. I think the struggle that DC has is they haven't had the time to develop these characters in previous films that Marvel has had. When Iron Man, spoiler, when Iron Man dies at the end of Infinity War Endgame, the two long films, it really hit a lot of fans. I mean, people were crying out to bring him back. There were, advertising boards going up saying, "Bring back Iron Man," because we've had 21 films to really, know the character and understand his background. But the struggle with this film is they're trying to kind of force in these stories in one film. And so I like what they did here. I feel that they could have had a 4-hour version of this film with 2 films and maybe develop the characters a bit more. I think it might be a bit of a struggle with Harley, who's a complete loon. But I can sit and watch her for hours because she's so funny. But I don't know if you agree with me, but I feel like it's almost like one of those free samples we used to get through the front door. Try out this new drink. It felt like they're almost there with the development of character, but they're not quite. Does that make sense? And I'm sure we're going to see more of Peacemaker. We'll talk about that later on. I agree with Amy. I could spend all night looking at just watching Harley being Harley. She's brilliant, and all the little quips and comments she comes out with. And I think Margot Robbie. I mean, James Gunn basically wrote the script with Margot Robbie in mind, because she was so good in previous films. I really enjoyed Polka Dot Man again. Again, he reminded me of the Mystery Men. I enjoyed King Shark, but I think I wanted to see more of the Weasel. He,
Well, the good news
just-
is he's.
Yeah, I know.
You know,
Yeah.
you might.
we might, but I just thought he was just the way he moved and the way he sounded was just hilarious. And he's just such a terrible superhero. There's nothing they could have done with him in the film. I don't know how they bring him back, but he's just it just made me laugh so much. So moving on, I think we've touched on this a little bit, but it'd be good to go through some of the visual styling and the look of the film. And we can talk about some of the photography as well. Mark, what were your thoughts on the film itself and how it looked and how it was designed?
I thought it was really beautifully shot, actually, and it's sort of the way it was filmed, particularly at the start, and maybe with the beach scene, maybe as they get into that. It reminded me of very much of an 80s action film as well. I got the way of the cinematography and the way it looked at the start. I got a very Predator sort of feel from it, I thought, as well. The Arnie one in the 80s, the way it was sort of filmed. There's really big, nice sweeping shots of the jungle and that side of it as well. And I got that kind of that 80s action vibe, which I think he was going for, because, as I said, a lot of what this film is an ode to the 80s version of the comic as well. So I did think he was going for a bit of an 80s sort of aesthetic at the start. With that being said, he's got a lot more interesting shots in this for me than his usual films as well. So I talked about the funny scene about when they accidentally kill like some of the good guys and that. But again, some of the filming on that is really well shot, and it's not just the usual sort of action scenes. There's a lot of long takes in it. And there was one scene in the film, John, I know you've seen it again. Isn't there a shot where it's done from backwards and it comes back up again, the way it's filmed? I don't know if it's in the fight with Starro, but it's kind of like...
You're talking about right at the beginning of the film where...
No,
where in the prison, in Bellevue prison, and you're looking at the... I can't remember the character's name now. Someone find out the character. The guy with the long hair.
Savant.
Savant, that's
yeah,
it.
Savant.
So he can kind of predict what's going to happen, can't he?
Yes.
And he's killing that little canary thing. But the film starts off with the song "Folsom Prison Blues," Johnny Cash, and you're looking at it in the puddle reflection, and then it pans out, and you realise as it pans out, it flips out of the puddle reflection.
Yes, it
you
is.
can see the crosses on the walls where he's been hitting previous
Thank you. That
creatures.
is it. Yes.
So yeah, I mean that's a nice little trick, isn't it? It kind of. I initially thought that the marks on the camera were like a pane of glass, but you realise it's imperfections in the puddle as it pans out. Do you mean that sort of thing?
I think, yeah, that's what it was, yeah. And I'm sure there's another scene towards the end in the final battle with Starro when, like, do you know in Spider-Verse they do that thing, don't they, when he jumps up off the building and he goes downwards but the city's the up.
Yeah.
I'm sure he does something like that in one of the shots towards the end when they're running from Starro. I can't quite remember now, but I did remember that in his visual. Like, there's some more different angles I think he does in different shots than he normally does in like what he would do like in Guardians as well.
He plays around with the gravity a little bit, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's got a lot more freedom, I think, in this to film it the way that he wants to as well. So I enjoyed that. I thought it was well done.
Amy, how about you?
There was one quick shout out to Mr. Smith, who was my A-level media studies teacher and thus ruined most film viewing experiences for me, which means I spot these lovely things. There was during the fight between Peacemaker and Rick Flag, there was this, a lot of it was filmed at the beginning as a reflection on Peacemaker's helmet, which I thought was a beautiful shot to take, but also it was a really kind of metaphorical moment where it demonstrated this is no longer Peacemaker. He's removed his mask and what makes him Peacemaker. He's now just a dude fighting a dude. And I thought that was beautifully done. I thought that was lovely.
And you could kind of, as they came closer to the helmet, every so often you could see a hand or a foot in the corner of the frame. And so you know that was not CGI'd in, that was practically done. And actually James Gunn has mentioned this in some of his interviews of the film, that he tried to do as much as possible as practical effects. I mean, there is CGI in this, but he tried to do as much as he could when the characters were interacting with the world around them as practical effects. And a lot of the scenes in the Jotunheim Tower when it was falling were built sets that were running through as well. I like that. And in fact, when I watched it the second time, I noticed that it stood out, that helmet scene stood out a lot more And I was going to mention actually, so I'm glad that you did. Alex, how about you in terms of the visual style of the film? What did you enjoy?
Yeah, no, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think what I liked about it was how much they led on things like the chapter names and making it clear that it was. It felt kept reminding you of the comic book roots of it, and I think that was quite nice because it wasn't needed. It was nice touches, but it was more about reminding you of it, although it never showed you like a comic pane. Visually, it kind of just brought you back to that, and you were like,
there were elements,
of course.
weren't they, in the world around them that became letters, like the blood in the water.
That's right. Yeah.
So
yeah,
like
exactly.
The aerials on the roof and things. I thought that was really clever.
It was
they
really
kind of
good.
Crept up on you, didn't they, in the first few times?
Yeah, exactly. It took a little while to get used to them, but I think the thing is, once you came to see them, you were like, oh no, this is nice. I feel like that's a nice nod, and I feel like he did that for every main character. So he kind of gave each of them a stylized thing. So you had, I mean, the polka dots are stylized as enough because it's just color, but it was just like he had a view of everyone. There was a screen, a moment in when the rat catcher does her thing, where they kind of just really overdid that, and obviously Harley with the flowers.
Yeah.
And so it really felt like he'd kind of amped all of those up to 10 and 11 and just sort of turned them really up and just said, this is what we had, this is what you saw in the comics, or you would have thought about in the comics, and now we're going to carry on with the remainder of the film. But so I did enjoy that. It kind of took me a little bit out of the plot sometimes, but I think it was worth doing. I mean, I think he did it really pretty well.
If you compare this film to another James Gunn film like Guardians of the Galaxy, I felt, and this is not a criticism, I felt that there was less polish to the way it looked, but I liked that. Mark mentioned earlier on how it kind of reminds me of an 80s action film. There are certain sort of, the feel to it was much more handheld cam. And, films like Commando and Predator, there's less trickery going on, and it's just pointing and filming. Especially since a lot of the scenes really are battle scenes or fighting scenes. When you compare this to some film like John Wick, where the colours are played, there's a lot of shadows and contrast and colours, and a lot more sort of pizzazz and glamour to it. This felt very much more like, I'm going to use the word visceral because there's a lot of gore in this film, but I think James Gunn didn't want to, overdress it, if that makes sense. Because there's a lot of kind of, especially with the slums of the Corto Maltese buildings towards the end. This is not a deluxe posh place. We're not flying to a different locations like we do in the Winter Soldier. It's very much more a grounded feel to it. I thought that was well done. I thought that was a conscious choice on Gunn's part as well. I'm going to be really interested to see what his next film is. Do we know of any other projects that he's involved with right now? I don't know. I know he's going to be directing some of the series that's a spin-off from this film, which we're going to talk about later on. But do we know any other project he's involved with? Guardians of the Galaxy 3?
He's doing Guardians 3, yeah. That's towards the end of this year as well.
He's executive producing Thor Love and Thunder as well.
Right. Doing well for himself, isn't he? Well, I wonder how successful they're going to be. How successful was this film, Alex? Give us some facts about this. Because obviously, right now we are in a rather strange situation where we're in that transition where certainly in the UK, we're starting to see things going back to normal. I have, I know Alex has as well, recently purchased the Limitless subscription to our local cinema. So over in the UK, the Odeon cinema, you can pay £10 a month and go and see as many films as you want at certain times of the week. So I've seen a lot of films in the last couple of weeks, but I don't know. I've not been to a full cinema yet since I've been back.
No.
So
I think you would have expected that this would have sold well based on the fact that there's actually been a real lack of big blockbusters.
Yeah.
And the obviously they're deliberately sort of being cautious and almost taking turns to do a release so that they don't compete with each other, and so that way they can get the most. So it didn't do as well as it was meant to. So it was 118 million is what it's taken to date, and that's well off of its 750 million that it actually took for the original Suicide Squad, which actually surprised me because I didn't think that was much of a success, but they had obviously released it at a good time.
Well, you've got the DC fans taking a punt on the first one, haven't you?
That was
not knowing what to expect.
So I think that they did very well with what they were given to get Suicide Squad to do so well, and I think the fact that the Suicide Squad didn't do as well is a bit of a challenge, because I think it is going to hold back from any future versions. I think that's something we're going to be a little bit challenging.
I do think it'll make its money though when it comes to rentals as well, because it was on HBO Max in the US, wasn't it, as well? So doing this.
What do you mean by rentals?
Cinema.
Though, Mark? What do you mean by rentals?
Well, as in like with home rentals.
But if,
so for
if
example,
they're streaming it on HBO Max, you don't.
Well, I mean
rent
the
that
UK, so
film,
is what I
do you?
meant.
It's part of the
No.
collection.
Yeah,
of
but like for people who don't subscribe to HBO Max, who might buy it on iTunes or buy it on Amazon, for example, or buy Blue.
Yeah.
I think in rental or like buying it and streaming, I think it will do, because it's only on HBO. I think the deal they do is only on there for about like 3 weeks, something like that, and it comes off. I think the way they do it.
Well, they say most films make most of its money in the first 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Some films are left for 45 days in the cinema before they go to streaming. Some are longer, but most of the money, most of the big bucks is made in the first 3 weeks for film. Yeah.
Yeah. So the budget was 185 million, and the box office says it's 120. They'll make it. They'll probably get to 185. So they'll make their money back, because the other thing
is that with marketing or without marketing that budget?
Good question. It doesn't
usually
say.
It doubles
Wikipedia.
it, doesn't it? Almost. So tell me the stats for streaming, then, Alex.
Let me go through it. So the thing is, that's the other thing, because of course they don't get money for streaming that way. So HBO obviously will get memberships, but that's not recorded against the box office. So it may be that it did very well. Streaming's a big factor in this case because it was a simultaneous release. So they said that 2.8 million households, predominantly in the States, because that's where HBO Max is available. Mm-hmm. It's available in other countries, but not in the UK. But yeah, 2.8 million streamed it over the first 4 days of release, which is very high. It was the second largest total on the platform, behind Mortal Kombat. I'm not sure that's a huge comparison, but I honestly think the fact that it was really high just shows you the demand there. But there is that challenge, because if you have HBO Max and you want to see the film and you would normally go to the cinema, then that is a missed out opportunity. And I think that's one of the challenges is when they're looking at the pure numbers. I think they're going to find that doing a simultaneous release, while it's practical at the moment in the pandemic, I think they will end up delaying it to an extent, because otherwise they will lose the fans who would go to the cinema but then have HBO and want to save a buck or two, or maybe they've just got a busy week and they couldn't catch it, and so they watch it on their big TV, and then they don't think about going to the cinema to see it again, and then they've lost that.
So the challenge here, Alex, challenge here is, sorry to interrupt you, the challenge here is that there's a certain generation that will still always want to see the film in the cinema.
Yes.
But there's a much larger, demographic of people now who are used to watching even the best films on a phone that's 5 inches tall, or 5 inches diagonally, and then less concerned about going for the experience of sitting in a cinema, getting your popcorn, having amazing sound, a big screen. There's a big demographic that are less concerned about that now. Personally, a good blockbuster like that, I have to see it in a cinema first. But I think I'm in a minority now, sadly. You've also got to take into account that some people will just wait. Like with the Disney Plus films, unless it's a Marvel film or a Star Wars film. I mean, I waited for Raya and the Last Dragon to come onto the free version rather than the Premier Access. I'm waiting for Cruella to come out at the end of this month as well. And you've got that group of people who are happy just to wait until it comes out free as part of their streaming service. So what are they going to do? That's a concern I have, really.
I think they'll go to a phased release. So I think they'll
June.
I think they'll still go back to. They'll have to go back to that, because if they don't, then there'll be some people that will end up saying, "Look, I'm for whatever reason, I'm not convinced to go to the cinema for this particular one." And do you know what? I've invested in a nice TV because I've been at home for 12, 18 months, and I've got used to watching things on the TV and just not having to get up and pay sort of 20 quid for popcorn and drinks when I can just get that from the supermarket for a couple of quid. So I think that's the challenge, is that if you give them equal options, I actually think you're going to have a good proportion that will just be like, yeah, streaming is fine, I will take streaming. And 20 quid on streaming is not, like that's the Disney price for Premier Access.
In the UK it is.
That's not the same. It's not the same in terms of revenue as 2 or 3 or 4 tickets going to the cinema. So even though they've got all the cuts and all of the overheads and things like that, the studio wants that more than they do the streaming money. So I think this is a period in time, but I do think the Premier Access model means that you're not going to have people waiting 6 months for the release of the Blu-ray or DVD. I think that's dead. I think that's gone now. I think what you'll find that people will watch it, and then if it's available on Premier Access in a month or 6 weeks or something, they will go, yeah, I might do that. And then if it's 6 months down the line it comes to streaming, then I think that's how they're going to have to do it, because people aren't going to rent a streaming movie when they're getting all the streaming already. I think that's the real concern.
If I know, I took my son to see a film recently, Scoob, because you like Scooby Doo.
Oh yeah.
And I think it came out a while ago. I think it came out on streaming first.
Yeah, I think it did. Yeah.
We never got around to watching it. But I then discovered it was being re-shown. I think it was at that period where the cinemas were just trying to show as much as they could. So it's re-shown at the cinema, almost like a re-release. And it was a sort of a matinee morning show, 10:20 in the morning for the dads and kids and things, and mums and kids. It was $3.50 a ticket. Now I wonder if some of these films could be re-released at the cinema 6 months, a year down the line, to fill in those gaps at a cheaper price. Because I think if you weren't tempted to watch the film at the cinema when it was full price, but you were happy to stream it, what if you could go and see it in retrospect later on down the line for £3 or £4?
They tried doing that with Alita, didn't they?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think there must be a lot of people kind of planning, how can we make money out of this in the long term? I get the feeling, and I don't know, because Amy, you're the TV lady, you know your stuff. I get the feeling that what we might end up seeing is less of the blockbusters. We'll still get them because I think they're still a moneymaker, but because there'll be less money in the industry, we're going to see a lot more of the Ken Loach, your kitchen sink drama, your thrillers, are slightly less like The Courier, films that are still a damn good films, but are less of the CGI budgets and the explosions. A calming of the sort of the subject matter in the cinemas, and perhaps seeing more of the flashy stuff as streamed TV series,
Absolutely.
like WandaVision, Loki, and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there will, obviously, it's always going to be Marvel films. They'll keep spinning them out in 100 years' time. But no, I think this is going to leave the way open for other smaller, still very good, but films that people otherwise wouldn't have had the opportunity to see. Now that there's not going to be as much of the great big blockbusters, they've found a way through. Going back to what you said about re-releasing things, I know that they're going to be showing Labyrinth in cinemas, I think.
I'll go see that again.
So there's quite a few kind of oldie films that are coming out, and they're going to re-release them. So I'm sure they'll be bringing out something spooky around Halloween for us all to go and watch on the big screen. Because exactly as you said, if we could go back again and watch something that we missed first time round, would we? Especially if it was cut price. Yeah, and look at also during lockdown the emergence of all of these car park lot cinemas that have come out, and people. I mean, that can we
Secret
just stop
cinema
showing
as
The
well.
Greatest Showman, because they're dragging around this dead horse now. But that, first of all, as soon as you see that advertised, look on the listings, because there will be some other really good films too. Not doubting how good that film is, but to say that that's a really good flag for you to spot, where they're going to be watching a proper good old film on a big screen.
I think money is a big factor when you go and see a film. The fact that, I don't know how you feel about this, Alex, the fact that I now can go and see as many films as I want in the month. I went, I rented the first one and then watched the sequel, Don't Breathe 2. It's probably not a film I would go and see at the cinema by choice. I can't recommend those two films enough if you've never heard them before. And they are budget sort of shock gore thrillers, but really, really well written. I mean, they're almost exploitation in terms of the violence, but at the heart of really good stories, and they are made on a budget. And I think those sort of films are going to do really well because they don't need to make back the nearly $1 billion budget some of these films have. It's an interesting thought, and we're going to have to keep our eye on this, and we'll feedback in future podcasts. But we're almost finished. We're almost about to run the credits, but just before we do run the credits, we need to talk about the post-credit scenes from the film. And these are the sort of things that get broken down in lots of YouTube videos and so on. Now, we do have our resident DC expert here, Mark. Have you all seen the post-credit scenes?
Yes.
Because I tend to do this when I'm in the cinema, as the credits roll, and you can see everyone's phones coming on at the end of the cinema. And that's another issue I have, mobile phones in cinemas. Maybe I'll talk about that later on. But I turn mine on to check. I always check on the internet, on IMDb, are there any post-credit scenes, to see if I can get to sit in the film and wait. And so I did, and I waited. And there are two scenes. There's one with the weasel in it. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That's the first of the
Yes.
two.
Yeah,
isn't it?
so the weasel's the first one, and then the second one is Peacemaker.
And he's in hospital, isn't he? Being patched up.
Yeah.
Yeah, we only stayed for the first one actually. We had to find out because we thought it was done because it didn't give you any cue about it.
No.
Never stay until it finishes. Golden rule.
But yes.
so-
Yeah, so Weasel survives, so I don't know how long he's actually sort of like he's supposed to have drowned. So I don't know how long he's there for, but he does sort of wake up and coughs up a load of water and then walks off. So that's the first one. So Weasel does survive.
I don't know if we're going to see much of him. I think that was just a fun little thing. I don't think he's a...
Ah.
That was like the
I don't know.
Howard the
Ooh.
Duck.
Oh, okay. Go on then, Mark. Go on.
So
Thoughts?
So allegedly, Weasel will be in the Peacemaker TV show on HBO Max. Is
They're going to be like
what
a
we're led to
duo.
believe.
Crime
I
fighting
think
duo.
he will. I don't know if it'll be a duo, but apparently he is going to be in it. And I think that because some of the characters, so there's an interview that I read with Gunn as well. So the show itself, so obviously John Cena is Peacemaker in this spin-off show that they've done, which will be on HBO Max next year. Confirmed people in it are Sean Gunn, who's obviously James Gunn's brother, who does the motion capture.
He might be Calendar Man, though.
Exactly, yeah. He may well be Calendar Man in it as well, exactly. And then the two of Amanda Waller's assistants, the blonde lady who's James Gunn's partner in real life, Jen, and the other guy in the glasses, they are going to be in the show as well. There's no idea of who else in the film might be in it, but it's a good indication that Weasel will be in at least one or two episodes. And I would expect to see some of the people that got killed off very early in the film.
Like flashbacks.
We'll get in flashbacks. Maybe we'll get their sort of scene and their time to shine in flashbacks. So you may well see like a Nathan Fillion cameo, Mongol who doesn't even speak, who jumps on helicopters and killed straight away.
Yep.
Maybe we'll get a scene. So I think some of those characters maybe that weren't perhaps treated that great in that beach scene will get their chance to shine in the HBO Max show as well next year.
So Stephen Agee was the kind of the geeky, nerdy guy that kept drinking Coke, who was in the...
That's the guy, yes.
He was in the ops room, and I thought he was quite funny, actually.
Yeah,
and then good. Jennifer Holland, who you're...
That's it, Jennifer Holland,
she's Amelia Harcourt in this. So they're going to be a bit... They reminded me, those two, a bit of like Phil Coulson from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like a normal sort of agent that handles the superheroes.
Yeah, because they can't get Fiona Davis back for that TV show because she's too good. A, she's too good.
She's too expensive,
and B, she's too busy and expensive, actually, we didn't talk about her. She was actually very good as well.
She was very good.
Yeah, I did like her. She's great in everything. She's brilliant.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, I presume she'll be in. She'll be in. She won't be in this Peacemaker series, you're saying?
No, she won't be in the Peacemaker series, no.
Yes, Amy.
I don't think she'll need to be, because there's also a character in the new Peacemaker series whose name is Captain Locke, who is a police captain. So I think I think just the inclusion of the fact that there is a police captain involved makes me feel like Peacemaker might be a superhero twist on a procedural cop drama.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that might be what we see. So I've done some more looking up on Peacemaker, and from what I can tell, Peacemaker includes the TV show includes his dad.
Mr. Peacemaker Senior.
Peacemaker's dad. So it contains his dad. It contains the team who presumably are going to be feeding him what to do. There is a judge involved. There's a senior police person involved, and then 2 chummy cop mates. So yeah, it's all headed towards procedural drama, procedural cop stuff. Think like a mixture of Bones and all those sorts of things.
Oh, that sounds good. I'm looking forward to that. I quite like those.
Yeah, but it will be with a superhero twist, which, to be fair, I don't think we've seen before. So
how do you feel, all of you, about a Peacemaker series? Alex?
Yeah, I think... I could really take it or leave it at the moment. I think I need to see something to whet my appetite. Obviously, it's a bit too early, but I feel like there's going to have to be something to get me back in, because obviously you're not going to have any of the Suicide Squad in it apart from him. So what's going to be holding it together? I mean,
Mark knows more about the universe, and he might have an idea or a hankering as to what could be involved with the other characters. I mean, I'm with you. I'm not massively into this. I'm not massively invested. I'd be much happier to watch a Harley TV series, really. But I get the feeling that DC want Suicide Squad to be the hub for all their next universe of films. I think they've done the superhero, they've done Superman and Batman quite a lot. I think, especially with the success of this film, and I know it's not made much money, but I think it will be a long-term success.
Yeah.
I just don't feel invested as much as the Marvel films. Mark?
I think what they're going to try and do with Suicide Squad is kind of like, you think of a spider diagram, like is they're going to put Suicide Squad in Suicide Squad like in the middle of that. And I think it will branch off. So you got like your Peacemaker TV sort of show that they've talked about.
Come on, Mark. What other series could we have? Come on, let's shoot the breeze here. What other series could we have from this hub?
Well, obviously a Harley TV series, but again, it might be very difficult, obviously with Margot Robbie's schedule as well, but we know how much she loves the character as well. I mean, what they could even do is they could just do offshoots, do half an hour, 45 minutes, one-shots.
Like an anthology, you mean?
Yeah, like a couple. Yeah, so like, for example, like TDK could be in like a 45-minute episode, maybe like with...
Would people watch that, though?
I think they would, yeah. I think, like, as you say, although it's not made the money yet, the word of mouth is really good, and I think more and more will see it, and I think more and more will enjoy it as well. There's also a bit of an Easter egg where Wallace says that the Bloodshot is in there because he shot Superman with a kryptonite bullet, didn't he? She says that's why he's in there for as well. So you
think there might be some origin stories here coming in then?
Well, I think there might be a bit more than that as well. I think, there's a rumour that Henry Cavill is going to re-sign as Superman for some more films. The idea is that they're not going to make a Superman sequel to Man of Steel, unfortunately.
Lewis and Clark. Come on, let's have some more Lewis and Clark.
Well, yes. But I think they're going to use Superman at the moment as a bit like as the Hulk in the MCU, where he's kind of like in all the team films and he's He's in bits of them, I think, but they're not going to make a Superman film. So I think that's what they're trying to aim at as well. So, yeah, so I think Suicide Squad is kind of going to be in that. I mean, what they do in DC, so without talking too long, is they're actually doing something very similar with their films that they do with the comics. So there's a DC offshoot in the comics called DC Black Label.
Right.
Those are kind of like one-off stories, or sort of like things are a bit more dark, a bit more violent than your sort of Justice Leagues, etc. as well. So examples of Black Label would be Suicide Squad, although I think that would be in continuity as well. Joker, that came out a couple of years ago.
Well, apparently they've got like 2 hours of footage of Jared Leto being the Joker, so they could still make a Joker film. Yeah,
so something like the Joaquin Phoenix Joker would be considered a DC Black Label film, i.e. a one-off story not connected to the, in brackets, main universe.
Yeah.
And then, speak of the main universe, obviously next year, and what's filming at the moment in the UK, is the Flash film. So they're currently filming the Flash film with Ezra Miller as the Flash, and very, very excitedly, they've got Michael Keaton and Ben Affleck back in those films as different versions of Batman. And the idea, I think, of that film is they're going to take it from...
God, I'm so confused now.
a show. So there's a comic series called Flashpoint, which is a very good series, which I won't go into that much now. But basically, the Flash does something and reality changes for the worse. And he has to try and rectify it as well. And it creates all these different multiverses.
Oh, it's a bit like the 52, isn't it, then?
Exactly, yeah. So I think the idea is of that Flash is that, you know, could you have the Snyder Cut this year? Everyone wants the Snyder Cut a lot of the fans want the Snyder Universe to continue.
Sure.
But Warner's don't seem to want to do it with him anymore as well. So I think the idea of this film would be kind of to bookend the Snyder run, you know, with those films and create a new reality or a new universe with new characters as well.
What they're
trying to do.
What we need to see here, just to finish off here, Mark, so we can put a sort of a tail on this, is I think what DC or Warner Brothers or whoever's in control here, because there's another company involved as well, isn't there? TDC, something like that.
Yeah, they own. Yeah, so there's a big political battle between them and Warner's at the moment as well.
What they need to do, though, whoever's in control of these things creatively, they need to do what Marvel and Disney done, which is show their map of the films.
Yes.
I don't know. Did they do that at? Help me out here. What's the big thing they do every year for DC? It's not called DC Con, is it? Is it called DC Con? What's it called?
Oh, it's the showcase. I think it's called. Or wherever it's called.
It's like DC Dome or something. Anyway, they have the big meet and they talk about it, don't they? And reveals. Last time they revealed that the new Gotham Knights video game. What's it called?
Fandome.
Fandome, that's it.
The
Fandome.
one, yeah.
I think that what they need to do really is clarify what's going on ahead. The problem is, do they know that?
I was just going to say, they don't know that because it's again that's another podcast on its own. But I'll summarise very quickly. So what they did, instead of building their own world, i.e. what the MCU did, what they did was, let's get Batman and Superman made because it'll make a load of money and that'll be our introduction to the universe. So instead of doing what MCU did, instead of introducing Batman in that film, the Ben Affleck version, instead of doing like a solo, sort of like a Ben Affleck film, a sequel to Man of Steel, get those going and build the universe, they just chucked it in straight away. And that didn't quite work. And since then, they've been going it up and they've been doing it as they're building along as well. When you've got some good films, so Aquaman was a very sort of good film.
Disagree.
Shazam. Well, you know...
I enjoyed Shazam, but I didn't like Aquaman.
Yeah, Shazam was a really good film as well. They've kind of been throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks at the moment as well. So they have struggled with a clear... with a clear intent of what they're doing as well. Then also there's a lot of problems behind the scenes on Justice League with Snyder. Obviously, we talked all about that before in the previous podcast. Jeff Johns has had a big influence on it as well, but because of how bad Wonder Woman was and because he's got a bad relationship at the moment with a lot of people, Warner Brothers, he's sort of out. There's a massive... I could talk about it all night.
It sounds like a bit of a mess to me.
It is a mess.
And I
There's
think-
a massive power struggle there, where with Feige, obviously,
Yeah.
he's the king of all his surveys at MC. You know, in the MCU, they're basically polar opposites at the moment as well.
Well,
So it's a miracle that Warner's producing anything that's decent at the moment.
and I think the miracle is at the moment the Suicide Squad. I think it's going to be critically maybe they're one of their better films. Well, we'll have to follow this in future podcasts. We'll keep our eyes out and watch the next films that come out. Let's do some housekeeping before we go. Mark, are you on Twitter?
I am not on Twitter, I'm afraid. No,
It's not a bad thing. If you want
No,
to follow
no.
any of the presenters here, myself, I'm at John PR Evans. Alex is at Alex Hansford, and Amy is at Awakey. And you can also follow the show Twitter feed, which generally just at the moment we're just posting when our podcast comes out, but there'll be more on that later on. And that's at Play Pause Turn. And if you have a hankering to go onto our website and just listen to our shows on the web address, that's at playpauseturn.show. This has been Play Pause Turn, and thank you for listening.